Verify team getting a lot of questions about the extra $300 in unemployment benefits ending in just a couple of weeks. Some of you wanted to know whether this includes all of the federal money available to Texans. Investigative reporter Cheryl Mercedes verifies.
Governor Greg Abbott announced in May that after June 26, Texas will opt out of the federal pandemic unemployment assistance programs, including the extra $300 per week Congress approved under the American Rescue Plan. The reason, he said, the number of job openings in Texas is almost identical to the number of Texans getting unemployment benefits. Nicole wrote the Verify team. Is it true he's actually canceling all of the ARP programs, including federal pandemic unemployment compensation, pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, and the pandemic unemployment assistance? Charlene wrote the Verify team. No one is stating that those on unemployment on federal emergency funds will lose all unemployment, not just the $300. What is the truth? Our source for this is the Texas Workforce Commission. Cisco Gamez with the TWC says the state will continue paying federal pandemic unemployment benefits under the ARP through June 26th. It includes the PUA program for people who typically do not qualify for regular state benefits, the PEUC, which extends regular state benefits, and the FPUC, which provides the extra $300 benefit. Gamez says the TWC will continue to pay regular state unemployment benefits to Texans who remain eligible, but we can verify federal PUA, PEUC, and FPUC benefits will end the week of June 26th. Texas is not alone in stopping the federal unemployment benefit of $300 a week. Half of the states are doing it, including Florida and Ohio. With your Verify, I'm Cheryl Mercedes.
Good to know. Have something you want us to look into for you? Go ahead, shoot us an email to verify@khou.com.